Welcome back, Guardian. Thanks for tuning in. Before we start episode 4, there's some things that I want to get off my chest that sort of eat at me, and that is why I can't post content that often. It's not that I don't want to, my goal is to post every single day if I could do it, but it's unrealistic for me to think that I can do that because once the season starts, I'm all hyped, I want to make a ton of content, and then the reality sets in of the type of content that I create simply just takes too long to do. I'm really the only one online that covers every full detail about a build, down to its tiers and everything and the weaponry and the synergy with it. I don't just slap on perks with an exotic and say, hey, here's a build, because to me that's not a full build. I try to dial in everything, the tiers, the perks, the weaponry, the synergizing of everything, all the way down to the final T basically. And to do that takes a crap load of different runs and different testing other exotics, trying different tiers out, trying to figure out what the perfect tier is for momentum transfer to see how many seconds I'm getting off, because it changes all the way from 1 through 10. Even the same thing with impact induction, going with discipline and going with the hits and stuff. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I don't talk about, and that's what takes so long to do. And then not only that, I still have to grind my pinnacles and try to level my guardians up, and since I've started making content, I'm always like 2 to 3 weeks late of Grandmaster and getting to play them because I choose to make content over grinding my guardians. So I'm trying to balance both of these things on top of trying to make some high quality edited videos that actually look like episodes, I don't want to just, have some lackluster quality content, I want to make it look legit so as you're watching it, you're also entertained. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this stuff. And for other content creators who are trying to grow their channel, just for money purposes and things like that, then of course you're going to go the faster route. You're going to be doing TWAB videos, you're going to be doing weapon review videos, damage test videos, things that are really easy to make. But when it comes to a Rustopholis build, quote unquote, I want my builds to be the best in game for a specific exotic, and by knowing that stuff, that means you got to know exact tiers and for the event you're also trying to do it for. If you're making a base game build or if you're making a Grandmaster high tier level build, there's differences in both. Like for my Nez Sin build I just made, I keep telling people to go to tier 7 over tier 10 discipline, because when you apply the Nez Sin recharge rates, it's almost identical from tier 7 to tier 10. So if you're going to a tier 10 discipline, that means you're either sacrificing recovery or your melee recharge, and the melee this season is really strong. So I would rather have a tier 7, which is exactly like a tier 10 for my discipline, and then have a tier 6 or tier 7 melee. That way I can proc the Hedron damage 25% buff way more often instead of wasting my tiers in places they shouldn't be wasted in. So like I said, I wouldn't know that though unless I went out and did research. So for every build that I make, my entire existence goes into those builds, and I want to make sure they're 100% the best version of that build. And to do that, like I said, it takes a lot of time, and then it takes even longer just to edit the videos and find the right footage. So again, my apologies, but I take my content seriously, and I want to make sure that I'm not just wasting somebody's time by telling them to put an exotic on and some perks, and there you go. And it takes skill in itself to find a lot of that data, because you have to do a lot of solos and hard content to test your tiers out and stuff. And if you're not good enough to play solo activities like Grandmasters and stuff, you're not going to be able to enter that level of play to even test to make high-end tier builds like that. So that's just what I'm getting at. Again, my apologies, it takes a minute to make content, but I promise, if you were a fly on my wall watching all these calculations and all these stopwatch tests that I do to dial in these builds, it would totally make sense. And you'd see how and why I know all the stuff that I talk about in these videos. It's not that I just automatically knew it, I had to go out and grind it to know the information. But let's talk about episode 4, because in this episode, we're going to be going over all the almighty builds of the season, around 18 different builds that provides a combination of both support and ad control beastness. So hit subscribe, let's get into this video and talk about the fragments first, the best for this season for PvE gameplay, starting with Whisper of Bonds. Defeating frozen targets with weapons grants you super energy. So if you haven't tried this out, you pretty much don't need any intellect. I'd actually do 0 if I had a chance to get tiers in other places, but doing a tier 1 to 10 is going to be pretty much identical. I tried all these tiers out, and I'm going to fast forward the double time the footage here. I spent a lot of time on this topic in past videos. I actually have a 2-part series. It was testing 3 versus 10 intellect. When you add in speed kill combat, 3 and 10 are the same. You don't get any benefit by having 10 versus a 3 basically. And it's because when you're slaying out on targets, you get the same amount of super energy gain whether you're on a 10 or a 3. But with Whisper of Hedrons, you actually want to wait and try to freeze as many targets as possible and then kill them, and you can get up to a 51-second super, but about 2 minutes and 15 averaged out. Now next up, Whisper of Hedrons. What this does is when you freeze targets, you get a 10-second timer and you get 25% bonus damage. Here it is with match game on, -23 light, and I have Hedrons procced, and I'm able to take the shield off this enemy by being at such a disadvantage. So it's a really beast perk. I'm going to give you some other examples, such as right here on this boss. Now if you had a high impact reserves fusion rifle plus the head drawn damage, and on some bosses fusion rifles on the crit shot will do double the damage. I know with Scarlet Keep boss and the Broodhold bosses this applies to, so you can get 115% bonus damage by doing this crit shot buff on some bosses and some red bar targets by having those combination of perks on. But here it is with regular damage on a target, still 2 shots, but you can see the difference in damage on the meter when you don't have it versus when you do have it. Here's another damage comparison as well, 13 shots from Xenophage on this hunted target, and then 13 shots without it. I'll do like a side-by-side comparison, but the 25% damage buff is pretty insane, especially when it's so easy to proc just by freezing targets, which we'll be doing all the time with these builds on that I'm going to show you. Another test I want to go into and just kind of give you a heads up on is a God Roll Seraph hand cannon using high impact reserves. High impact reserves is pretty much slept on this season because you get that 25.75% damage buff, and then when you add 4 times the charm on this and the ability to create cells and then add drop mag and chambered compensator with that, you can get up to 27 rounds of straight doing crit shots, which is easier to do on boss targets than it is like red bars and stuff. And it's because bosses are more stationary most of the time, they don't move around as much, so you can sit there and focus that crit quite a bit. But the thing about the head drawn damages is it doesn't stack with high energy fire, so any kind of like seasonal buff perks like that, except for one, it doesn't apply to those. So if you do high impact reserves or one for all with the head drawn damage, the perks on weapons will stack with head drawns, but high energy fire will not, so you won't get that extra 25%. If that were true, I would have started off damage here with 45% and then adding the head drawn damage, and it would have went up to like 75% basically, but I'm only getting a 57.5% with high impact reserves and the head drawn damage, which actually should have only equaled around 50%, so I don't really know where the extra 7-point-something% is coming from. I've actually noticed a lot of like extra 7% damages coming from other tests, such as like Vorpal Weapon. When I was using the escape velocity test, adding all the damage perks to it, I was still getting like an extra 7%, so I don't know what's changed in the game, or if I'm just getting some random buff by applying buffs, I don't know, but I keep getting that number and I can't figure out where it's coming from. But here it is one more time with high impact reserves and head drawn, and you can see it's the same numbers when I had high energy fire on. What makes this weapon a god roll is the 27 rounds you get because of 4 times the charm, the high impact reserves, the cell production, the fast reload pace you get with it, the handling masterwork, which is great for a precision frame, which means the weapon's going to sway a lot better from target to target by having higher handling. And then overall you get a great balance of stats because of chambered compensator, and again back to the handling masterwork, and then for the reload speed. So if you ever come across this specific roll, especially with that handling masterwork, you'll be surprised at how easier it does sway target to target for kicking so vertically. It gives you a lot more angles you can get crit shots and maintain the crit shot with. But another seasonal perk that I also got to add bonus damage with was Power of Rasputin. So because of that hidden 7% I was talking about, I'm able to ramp up to 67.75% bonus damage. So high impact reserves on fusions and hand cannons, hold on to them. Next up, Shadebinder. Killing slowed or frozen targets will grant you ability energy, and then Whisper of Shards. Shattering crystals gives you a temporary boost in grenade recharge, and that keeps extending with the more crystals you shatter. But to give you a brief example of how much recharge you're getting off that, 1 crystal shatter equals 10 seconds. To me, Cold Snap Grenade is way more beast than any of them so far, and then when you match that with Ice Flare, you get to keep seeking targets out every time you kill them, and then you also get the ability to drop your Rift and freeze targets with Frost Pulse. And when you combine all this together, here's one of many situations you can get into. There's a lot of stuff going on in this situation, one of which we're going to go back to later when I start talking about weaponry, but watch how many targets get frozen, and then watch the recharge rate of my grenade, which is already back. And then again, when I drop that Rift, I can freeze more targets. So if I wanted to go ahead and just throw my grenade, I could get it all back right here in this situation. But I didn't really need to, which is why I saved it. But I get so much control in all these situations of being able to instantly just stop targets. Just like right here, when I save my grenade to throw it again, and then it starts seeking targets all over again, giving my recharge ability back. And with all the builds I'm going to show you today, you're going to be doing this continuously. Anytime I'm using cells, I'm always going to be bringing up Xenophage, because currently in the game, this is the best cell producing and cell popping weapon you can have when it comes to the Wrath of Rasputin. Here's a quick look at my bond. I'm going to go back to it later, but aside from the bond, aside from Xenophage, there's 2 SMGs you got to farm out this season that are going to come more clutch than any other SMG, and that's going to be the Friction Fire and the 2 God Rolls you can currently farm out. One of them being Sympathetic Arsenal. What Sympathetic is going to do, it's going to allow you to rock Xenophage or Jotun or any slow reloading type weapon, but get to reload it as fast as you can reload an SMG. All you got to do is get a kill and then reload it. The second version is going to be the Wellspring option. That way you have one for reload builds and then one for synergy builds to go with the freezing rift you get, and also the subclass perks for the hunter and the titan. But here's that same situation I said I was going to go back to, but this time I'm going to talk about the friction fire in this situation. So I'm getting all these kills, and first you're going to see the special ammo drop, which it just did. So now I'm going to do the reload, and when I do the reload, it's going to reload my fusion rifle, which has demolitionist on it, and then I get xenophage ammo to drop. So then I reload again, and now I have xenophage reloaded, which means anything in front of my face is about to die instantly, and I can potentially make cells off of them. Threat detector is really nice when you have targets around you. The reload is great, but I really want the drop mag. That way I don't have to rely on anybody being around me to get that fast reload. So the accuracy threat detector adds on top of drop mag is really going to set that off for ultimate god roll. And there's also situations like this that can happen where you just happen to kill an enemy that happened to drop heavy ammo, and you're naturally just reloading your weapon like I was, but instead of it just reloading the SMG, I just got that xenophage ammo to bust that target down. Combat subtleties like that will happen all the time with the sympathetic arsenal roll, but Wellspring is also going to have plenty of benefits for synergy builds, so collect both of those and you'll have two of the best SMGs in game currently. What's also great about that SMG is it makes a great anti-barrier weapon. If you didn't know, Bungie nerfed anti-barrier shields. Even at negative 50 light, I'm able to still pop this anti-barrier shield, which means all anti-barrier weapons are now viable options in game. Now let's hop into the meat and potatoes and why we all came here. Keep in mind you can apply any of the exotics I recommend on the Titan and Hunter at the end of this video, but let's get into it with Warmind's protection with 2 machine gun finders, because special ammo has been pretty generous this season, and that first slot to go back towards your stats to build those up to the correct tiers we'll talk about in a second. But Warmind protection is basically like having protective light, but the main function it's going to provide for you is the ability to pop the cells and protect you while you're trying to pop the cell. Anything around it's going to give you 50% damage resistance. We'll talk about how to manage your ammo with xenophage in a little bit, but for the main focus of Warmind protection, it's simply just that, protect you to pop the cell. And then moving on to the arm piece and the exotic of choice I recommend for hard tier content is Claws of a Hamakara to give you 2 procs of the head drawn damage. I highly recommend using Global Reach on this build, but if you have somebody using Powerful Friends, you can use that for high energy fire or any other type perk you want to. We'll go over Global Reach later, but you definitely need Momentum Transfer. When you're using that with grenades, it gives you around 13 seconds off in a tier 5. When it comes to doing Master Ordeals or above that, tier 5 is a perfect amount of tier to go with Momentum and at least a tier 7 grenade. However, once I get my Hamakara's Master worked, it's going to give me 2 more points. I'm going to be dropping my recovery down to a tier 9 and then applying a tier 8 discipline, and then with that I'm going to be applying or recommending for you a demolitionist energy weapon, which is going to give me 14 seconds off at a tier 7 for each demolitionist kill that I get with a fusion rifle. But if I'm using anything other than a fusion rifle, it's only going to give me 7 seconds off per kill that I get. You can watch my grenade meter right here, how fast I get those back when I'm using the fusion with demo. That's why I highly recommend it. And then when you take all the grenades you're getting and apply that to the momentum transfer, it lets you get those dual melees back with the Hamakaras really quick. And the faster you get your abilities back, the longer you can keep the head drawn damage going. But once you get that tier 8 grenade unlocked, you're going to be getting your grenade back every 4 kills. And then once you throw that grenade, it's going to proc the momentum transfer. And then if you have at least 1 charged melee, the one in the background is going to be charging at a tier 0 speed. So you get the momentum transfer to have that one up and ready. But the way the combat pace of this build works out is you always have an ability when you need an ability, and it allows a better run and gun pace. I included the Karnstein armlets because they're not really a max tier exotic, because you don't do a lot of like melee kills per se, but it is still beast for like master and down if you're at master level. But I don't recommend it at master if you're way under light. I couldn't get it to work that well, but just by the gameplay I was doing, being under light in certain activities, I knew that this was going to work out once I do actually hit 1050 or 1080 light. But the benefit of this exotic is exactly what you see. You get a melee kill, and for around 6 to 7 seconds, you keep getting a regeneration of your health ability. So in situations like this, like if I need to get a revive on somebody, or if I melee kill a small ad and start taking a ton of damage from this wizard boss, I can still get my health back. Here's another situation where I have a down guardian, and then I need to get that revive, so I know that I can use one of these small thrall to proc the vampire caress on, and then go get the revive and take my chances by using those resist mods that I have to synergize with it, which makes this a beast setup to have on. But like I said, it's kind of meant for like base to mid tier. But if you're farming out a lot of hero style nightfalls right now in the game and you're kind of under light, this is one of those exotics that give you subtle but beast benefits. Now moving on to the solar support class of this, we're going to go back to Sun Bracers, and it has 2 options. It has Rage of the Warmind option, or you can go back and use the Global Reach option that I talked about earlier. But if you are using mid-tree solar support, Make sure you use Benevolent Dawn's ability of getting your rifts back and your grenades and your melees back over and over, because it always happens. I play with so many teams where people just don't drop rifts that are on that class, and it never makes sense to me. But here's a random tip with suppression. So when you use suppression with Warmind cells, it's supposed to make a harder pop cell, but I did notice this: if you add Rage of the Warmind and suppression, and there's some other combinations as well, but since we're using suppression on this build that we'll talk about later, and the rage option or the global reach option, I thought I'd go over this. For some reason, when you apply rage and suppression, it makes it to where suppression no longer becomes a hard cell to pop. It's not that great of a tip, but that does have plenty of benefits in combat when you're trying to hurry up and pop a cell with a ton of ads around and you're getting shot at. Now here's another tip with Rage of the Warmind if you didn't know about it, but when you apply that with Wrath of Rasputin, the kills you get with cells applies to the next production of a cell. So if you get a lot of kills with Wrath and Rage, it's going to make it to where you can produce your next cell a lot quicker. As you see right here, I just killed some ads, went to the next room, my first kill was another cell, and you can also kill a lot of ads with Wrath and Rage on and make cells with cell kills on top of that. So if you have a yellow bar around or just a ton of red bars in general, you can keep making cells back to back. Now there the situation was again, I killed a lot of ads with that cell, which means my next first kill is going to be another cell. So the more kills you get with cells, the more cells you keep reproducing. So aside from the extra damage that Rage of the Warmind is going to provide for you, you can also get a ton more cells added. But the downside to it is you don't get a lot of blast radius with it. As you can see right here, I just killed those ads, but then I made another cell right after that because the Wrath of Rasputin counted for the solar damage kills of that one cell. But you can see right here, the radius that I get when I'm using suppression, it only blinded that one enemy, and the other one that was only like 3 feet away didn't get blinded. Now when we go to global reach, it's going to grant us 24 meters of radius versus the 12 meters without global reach on. And you can see you get a lot more further protection because of Warmind protection. It's going to give you a lot further suppression, which is going to, blind or, disorient all the ads around, and the explosion's also going to go way out as well. So this is a really key benefit because in previous seasons, global reach only added around 3 more meters, but now it seems like it's doubled itself. It makes it way more of a key player than it used to be when Rage used to be the obvious choice. It's no longer that obvious anymore because this is actually a really beneficial thing to have in combat. There it is again, the harder cell to pop because I don't have Rage on, so I am going to have a little bit more trouble popping those cells. But here in a little bit, I'm going to explain why you really don't mind not being able to pop them that much, which goes back to maybe global reach is more of the better choice than Rage of the Warmind. I do appreciate the extra damage and the extra production of cells, but it really is 50-50 on which one's actually better. Of course, like I said, you're going to produce more cells with Rage, but this global reach is pretty badass. You can see how I easily reach those other far away ads and they're still blinded for the 9 seconds that suppression does, and I wish that I could afford to apply global reach and Rage of the Warmind, but unfortunately it doesn't fit on the build to apply both of them because Rage costs 5 energy, and if you put Rage on any other armor piece, it takes away other spots you need for other perks, and the other perk benefits outweigh what the global reach and Rage combination together will offer for you. You lose way too much of the build and its options and benefits while trying to fit those two in. If you look at the boss to the right in the cell, once he takes one more step forward, that's when Warmind protection is going to kick in, and that's the stock distance without global reach. Here in a little bit, I'll go back to the global reach version versus the stock version that I just showed you, but here it is again, blowing a cell up with the yellow bar target next to the cell, and how you can keep producing cells by either killing a lot of ads at once with Wrath and Rage, or killing just one yellow bar with Wrath and Rage will always make a cell. We'll dive back into Rage and Global with the other perks in just a little bit, but let's move on to the chest piece now. I'm pretty much always going to go resist mods because of the benefit they give you. I actually found the real numbers. 1 is 25%, 2 is 40%. I'll talk about those later, but use that first slot for your stats and then cellular suppression. Here's another friction fire moment where I was almost going to reload Xenophage, but then to stay ahead of my teammates in claiming these kills, I decided to go ahead and get an SMG kill, use that sympathetic arsenal, and get that reload in for Xenophage, which keeps me ahead of the combat where I'm still able to claim every kill in this area, and then I make that cell and do the cell suppression, and what it's designed to do in harder tier combat especially is to blind the enemies that the cell itself does not kill. Here's another example of this right here. So I make the cell, I blow everybody up in the area except for these 2 shielded wizards, which makes them disoriented for 9 seconds, and that's one of the main benefits I think a lot of players overlook because they think it's kind of a wasted perk sometimes because you're like, well, cells blow everything up, but the ones that it doesn't are usually the harder to kill targets or the shielded targets. So not only are you granting complete control for your entire team, you're also going to heal your entire team because of Fireteam Medic on the leg piece. To go with that, Machine Gun Scavenger and Still Traction for the best maneuverability you can have on your Guardian. Here's Global Reach, Warmind Protection, Suppression, and Medic, and the radius you're getting from the Global Reach. Now let's go back to Rage of the Warmind again. You can see the 12 meters versus the 24 meters that Global's adding for you. It's an extreme benefit when it comes to protection you're getting, because I'm getting 50% protection in this scenario, and then I'm able to suppress any adds that are about to kill me and then pop it to get 70% health back, and then any adds that don't die like this one, I can easily just take out. Here's another benefit, Explodey Shanks can make cells as well. You can see the suppression goes off because of the explosion off the Explodey Shank, and then Warmind Protection kicking in right at the last second. Here's another one of the thousands of seamless situations you'll be into with this build on, Sympathetic Arsenal with the SMG. I never have to worry about reloading Xenophage itself because I just reload it with the SMG. I make another cell, and then I can either kill, suppress, and heal myself all at the same time. What this build is designed for is all the major areas in the game. So right here, same situation, Global Reach kills everybody in the area. All that's left over is that one target, and I can just easily kill him because he's dumb for 9 seconds. And then you can see that Finder Brick drop that goes with my Scavenger on top of that. And now on to the final armor piece, the Bond or class item. Here's the non-solar version for Claws and KARN. It's going to be Healthy Finisher and Spoils of War. Every time you do a finisher, you're going to get all your health back, and it's also going to drop heavy ammo for you and your allies. Here's an example of a few procs. So I throw the grenade, and then watch the damage boost timer go off, because it's going to keep resetting itself as my grenade travels and touches to freeze other enemies. It's going to keep resetting the boost timer. There's also one melee out from the Claws of a Hamakara, and then I killed that enemy with Demolitionist, then I do another stagger, and you can see that timer still going on. I throw out my second melee, it's going to reset that timer, and then I accidentally ricocheted off that structure, which almost got me killed because I'm at negative 23 light, which is almost Grandmaster light level, but luckily I have Healthy Finisher on, which is going to restore all my health, and I also produce heavy ammo each finisher I do on those champions, which is also going to go back to synergizing with my weaponry and creating cells because of Wrath of Rasputin going with Xenophage. Here's another run we had done. You can see how important the Xenophage and the Blinding Grenade Launcher is in this situation, taking out all these shields, creating cells, and also blowing everybody up, also healing the team when we blow those cells up, and then disorienting everybody with cellular suppression. This build pretty much takes Rasputin, puts him inside of a Guardian, and then to go with the Revenant subclass, you have all those freezing capabilities to go with the grenade recharge, the class ability recharges, all the super recharge benefits, and all the damage boost benefits you get with that goes with Xenophage, and having that type of damage boost to go with all the other perks gives you one hell of a build. And with the ability to put perks on exotics now, you have Claws of a Hamakara, which nobody really cared about before this season, but you now get that 25% head drawn damage, and by having 2 melees, it allows one of the best builds in the game right now when you mix that with all the cell properties. Here's another example of this by having the Warmind Protection while you're trying to blow up a cell because you ran out of Xenophage. So by having the suppression and then the health on top of that, it's another one of the many benefits you're going to get and all the subtleties you're going to get out of this build. Here's another example of the synergy you're getting from the resist I'm using. I'm using Sniper Resist and Concussive Dampener, which is going to block the wizard damage. And then once I create the cell, I have 90% damage resistance with those 2 resist mods and the Warmind Protection. And then once I pop the cell, I got all my health back and disoriented everybody in that area. So yeah, Warmind Protection, Suppression, Fireteam Medic, Global Reach, Wrath of Rasputin, the total force of Rasputin mixed with the total force of the Darkness subclass equals one massive force to be reckoned with. Now moving on to the Solar subclass or the class item version. It's going to have Thermal Overload for overload grenades, and then obviously Surge Eater. So every time you or anybody staggers an overload, you're going to get your grenade right back. Now check this out with the Blinding Grenade Launcher. I throw that 8-second grenade and then blind them so they're blinded and standing inside that 8-second grenade, which easily kills all of them. And to this day, it's still one of the MVP weapons. But that's one of the many tactics you can use with it. Just blind enemies and then have those 8-second grenades. And then again for the overload champions, I'm at negative 50 light doing this master level hunt, trying to get some better drops for more materials so I can keep masterwork and armor. But watch how many grenades I get back, but then more importantly, watch how I totally control these overload champions where they can't even move, because 8-second grenades are really beast. If I had to pick one exotic and call it the MVP for overloads of the season, Sunbracers definitely take the cake for that. As you can see, the confidence they give me, where I'm just like all up in these overloads' faces, even though they can sneeze on me and one-shot me to kill me, but I'm able to still play aggressive, throw Xenophage up in their face, and then make a sell out of them when they're all finished, or finish him with that Spoils of War to get even more ammo. Here's a second run we did, same situation, got him stable, is stuck in that same location where he can't even move. Here's the screenshot of the build. Like I said, take the exotic off of this, apply a hunter or a titan exotic to it, use a demo special weapon, whether it be the blinding grenade launcher or whether it be a fusion rifle with demolitionist. Either way, just apply any of these 15 exotics, and I promise you this build will crush. Use Solar Subclass if you want to use the Overload version, and then obviously the Revenant for all the other versions of this build. But like I said, try this out, put it together, balance your tiers the way they need to be balanced. They've already been tested for your Guardian. Just apply it and enjoy beasting away. Don't forget to join the Discord, where we have community, we have builds, we have daily vendors, all the news. Every day at reset, you can check what vendors have what. There's all the information you ever need in Destiny on our Discord. Here's some gameplay of the Synthocept version of this build. Synthocept adds 50% bonus to your melee, and that also applies to the super melee as well. So when you're inside your super as a Titan, doing melees with Synthocept surrounded by enemies, your super does 50% more damage, and you have the cell making properties and all the goodness that comes with this build. But like I said, there's 15 different builds in this. It took a long time to try all them out and put this build all together. Some weapons that I recommend, again, going back to Truth Teller. Blinding enemies, find the blinding, auto-loading, and demolitionist version. You'll have the ultimate god roll of it. You can do that strategy I showed you earlier, blinding enemies and then letting them stand inside your 8-second Sunbracer. If you ever got the 780 fusion of the Aletha, that's the most accurate beast demolitionist fusion in the game right now. I hope you have a 780 version of it, even though they took it out of the game. It's only good for one more season, but damn, it's the most accurate demo fusion in the game right now. 780 with Torch. Moving on to Xenoclast. I'm sure you've had a ton of these drop. My most fun run and gun version of it so far has been Surplus, Demolitionist, and Barrel Shroud. I don't recommend Rifled Barrel in PvE. Barrel Shroud's got more sway, more on the run accuracy. Apex Predator, you can still get that from the Last Wish free chest. Put that code in. It makes cells as well with Wrath the Rasputin because it's Solar Rocket. And you can also use it again with that SMG Friction Fire with Sympathetic Arsenal, the example right there. And then Eyes of Tomorrow if you're one of the few lucky ones that have gotten this to drop. I don't have any gameplay or have this yet, but I heard it's a beast and Gallahorn-like. And obviously Jotun, another cell making weapon. You can also use that with the SMG to reload that. And then finally Sunshot. Those are a few of the good weapons that I recommend in the game right now, but we're going to be talking about a whole lot more as this season plays out, Guardian. If you didn't know how to turn this public event into a heroic public event, this is how you do it. Those little drones that fly around, the triangle ship looking thing, you just shoot those on all 3 different waves and it turns it into a heroic event. However, you still got to beat all 3 of the little tiny brigs, including the big brig, to make it fully completed to get the chest for it. So make sure you kill all of them before the timer runs out. But all you do is shoot those drones, and then voila, turns it into a heroic event. Hopefully you found that useful. If you didn't know, now you do. But Guardians, farm out that Friction Fire with that Sympathetic, and for Wellspring, get those 2 different options of it. I'm probably going to get asked why I'm not using Protective Light, and it goes back to what I've said originally about how combat changes every season because of things that are introduced into the game. And since we have the freezing capabilities, and we have them so often, especially with this build on, it makes it to where you don't really need Protective Light that often, or really ever, to be honest. I haven't really used it that much, but maybe on one build so far. And if you're using Warmind Protection, that's just as good because you make a lot of cells, and when you make those cells, you're protected, and then when you blow those cells up, you kill or suppress everybody and heal yourself at the same time. And for that reason, I just haven't found any reason to use it because the way that combat has now changed and the way that battle scenarios are, and based on the subclasses we have and the abilities those subclasses give us, it lets me have more control, which allows me to take away perks to add other perks in its place that are now replacing Protective Light. I'm not saying I'm never going to use Protective Light again, I'm just saying currently in the game and the way that things flow out, the way my strategies have been playing out, I just haven't had much use for it. But I hope today's video helped you out, Guardian. Definitely put on the almighty build, any of those 15 different versions. But you Guardians, take it easy. If you want to shop and support this channel at teespring.com/inspace, or you can also leave me a revive, Guardian, at paypal.me/Rustopholis. Again, it's been my pleasure. Check out my links below to support this channel. Also visit the About section to join the Discord, and also click that join button and join the Beast Squad for the ultimate support. You Guardians, take it easy. I'll see you all on the next video next time.
Space.